Good afternoon. My name is Rob Daasch. I'm a professor of electrical and computer engineering and this year's presiding officer of the Faculty Senate. I'd like to welcome all of you to the convocation today for 2012. It's remarkable to me always how fast the summer goes. I think I'm probably in good company with thinking to myself, I had lots of plans about how I was going to get things ready for this fall, and now I have about 3 days to get it all done. One of the things that this convocation does is gives the presiding officer an opportunity to have a few remarks. And I don't have a lot, and the main thing that I want to point out to you is the value of our shared governance. One of the key points of that shared governance is the participation of the faculty. And the faculty participates in a number of ways, serving on committees. Committee service is our key point of contact for shared governance. And faculty that serve on those committees are committing time to a very important enterprise that makes a lot of things go around, whether it be the curriculum or other matters associated with faculty or student status. I want to thank everyone for their service on those committees. I think it's a valuable contribution that you're making. Another contribution that you can make as a faculty member is indeed to serve in the Senate. I've done it a number of times over the years, and I have been gratified by the fact that the Senate is an institution that sees itself as evolving and becoming more engaged, not only with individual faculty and the issues around that, but also with the administration. And one of the ways that we've modified the Senate recently is to open up a notion of what's referred to as Senate districts. Now, this idea is a new idea that we're working on, and the basic structure of this Senate district is that faculty who serve as senators will be given a group of faculty from their unit that nominally defines a district for that senator. And what we're going to be asking senators to do this year is to be a bit more engaged with the faculty in their district through a series of email communications primarily. And so this year, as you go through the year, if you would look for and hopefully find valuable these contacts that your senators are making to your district, we would be very interested in having feedback, using it as a feedback mechanism, but also using it as a feed input way so that you can find out about activities that the Senate's engaged in, the longer sort of long wave institutional questions that are being raised in the Faculty Senate, etc. So just a note that those districts will come alive, and you'll start seeing those emails from your senators in your particular unit going through the entire academic year. And so I hope that you will find that valuable and a way for you to engage in the Senate. But I don't need to be standing up here and talking. There's far more important folks that should be at this podium than me. And the first, of course, is my great pleasure to introduce to the faculty at the convocation for 2012, President Wim Wiewel.
Thank you, Rob. It's been a pleasure to start working with Rob these last few months. We have monthly meetings and regular emails, and I look forward to a very productive year with the Senate and the faculty in general, of course. Welcome back, everybody. As usual, for those of you standing in the back, there are some seats in the front, which I know you won't take, but I feel compelled to say it anyway. This has really been, a wonderful September, especially, of course. It's always great when we have, this week where we have all the orientation and all the new students coming back, and at least they get to have good weather for 1 week, before it gets serious and starts raining again. I won't indulge in a very long, what did you do during your summer vacation, but I hope you all had a wonderful, both relaxing and productive summer vacation. Definitely two highlights of my summer summertime where I traveled to Korea and Japan, where we did student recruitment and began the formation of alumni networks with really good receptions both in Seoul and in Tokyo. So we look forward to continued expansion there, and then wonderful personal trips both to Mount Rainier and the Canadian Rockies. I can really, you know, there's nothing to give you a good perspective on the issues of the day than looking at rocks and mountains that were formed 500 million years ago and trying to puzzle how did this, you know, $200 million, this, you know, you see, I'm back at work. How did this, you know, 500 million year old rock get to sit on top of a 200 million year old rock? You know, how do you do that? And I know the geologist here can explain that, but since we already slipped into talking about money, you know, you can take the boy out of the office, but you can't take the office out of the boy. Among the really good things that happened this summer was that we kicked off some campaigns, particularly the campaign for the Viking Pavilion, and we landed, as you may have read, a $5 million gift, which is, you know, the second largest gift from a private individual that we've ever gotten. So that is wonderful. And I'm very pleased to say that we're in discussions about at least four other multi-million dollar gifts. And we have just upped the ante on major gifts. Now, I have to admit that our good friends up the hill make all of this sort of look like penny ante stuff. But, you know, we keep working at it, and we're doing a heck of a lot better than we were doing before. Of course, during the summer, we had a wonderful summer convocation. While, you know, that will likely be the last one we do in the park blocks because of the space constraints, but it really was a wonderful event. The other really good event was that U.S. News & World Report, whose rankings, as you know, are absolutely worthless and unscientific in general, but they listed us at number 10 on the list of up-and-coming universities. A great, great thing to be done. Looking forward just a little bit, you've seen outside the PR we're doing for Portland State of Mind. This is a renaming, rebranding of the PSU Alumni Weekend. We're going to be much more visible and really advertising it as a great city, a university, community event. It'll be more advertised. Some of the highlights, of course, are the mayoral debate that we'll be hosting here on campus on October 8th, and the Simon Benson Award Dinner, which is very rapidly closing in on breaking yet another fundraising record of, I don't know what the latest number is. I think this morning we were at $935,000 raised for the Simon Benson. Turning to more immediate matters having to do with the start of the academic year, our enrollment looks to be pretty much exactly where we wanted it to be. We were shooting for a 2% growth. Our enrollment and institutional research gurus keep telling me that we're going to hit it pretty much right on the button. So we're still a little bit short of that right now. So I'm very excited about that because, as you know, here's money again. All of our budget is based on that assumption. Now, looking forward in general for the coming year, of course, we will continue to have the strategic plan with our 5 main themes. We have not made any change in that. The individual tasks under that get adjusted. We are planning to start a new strategic planning process next academic year, not this one, because the current one is sort of being called the 2009-2013 plan. So probably by 2013 we should begin to think about the next one. So we'll be having discussions about how best to structure that. The big issues for me, and in a minute we'll hear from Sona Andrews, but the big issue for me that I'll be focusing on, one is trying to move forward the development of the new budget model. I think we're still not entirely sure whether we will get there by July 1 of 2013 or have to wait for another year. As I've said, it's more important to get it right than to get it fast. But we are beginning to do some small things already to begin to work on some of the principles that we will be using in the budget model. The other big issue is the discussion about institutional boards. if you follow that at all, the Legislative Task Force has come out with its recommendations that very much follow along the lines of what we've been advocating for the past few years. So I'm very pleased about how that begins to come together. Still a long road between here and the end of the legislative session as to a lot of the details. I already mentioned the Capitol campaign in terms of the Viking Pavilion. The other very important parts of the Capitol campaign are, one, the business school, which is in one of these negotiations about a multi-million-dollar gift. I'm very excited about where that's going, as well as a $50 million scholarship campaign that will be the third leg of the comprehensive campaign. And then in the course of the year, we will add the fourth piece of that, which is a whole range of the other ideas coming from the individual schools and colleges in terms of centers and professorships and so on. But so we're working on that. You know, as you know, the past 4 years, really starting in 2008, so this would have been the fifth time, I have done this, the main convocation talk. And as you may recall, the first year I did it without any notes. Then the second year I added slides. I can't remember what I did the third year. The fourth year I told you about my granddaughter. So I just run out of things to do. You know, I couldn't think of any new tricks. I thought I would have to start singing or dancing, and that would not be an advance from the previous years. So I was just absolutely thrilled that this year I could turn to our new colleague, Sona Andrews, and really ask her to be the headliner for the convocation. And I think that's very appropriate because I'm very much looking to Sona as a new provost to take on this very strong leadership role as our academic leader. Yes, of course, as the president, I'm there, I'm supporting it. But it's really her job to be the leader for us. And it is particularly timely, and she will talk about this in more detail, but I want to just tee it up very briefly, that truly I think we are now facing a more rapid change in higher education than we've ever had before. And this is probably a line that every president has used in every convocation speech in the last 50 years, and it may well always have been true, but I think this time there is really an extra dimension to that. The focus on the massive open online courses, the focus on what's been happening to tuition and therefore to student debt, the demand therefore for, well, what is higher education actually worth? The question that people just didn't used to ask. It was assumed we were sort of walking this blessed path where that at least was taken for granted. Questions are being asked that just weren't being asked before. And to figure out what that means for how we go about our task, our business of education, of teaching and learning, I think requires the involvement of everybody here. There's nobody who has the answer. I recently had a chance to talk to one of the real experts in higher education, asked her in what state they were having the strongest and best and most robust debate about what all these changes mean for how we go about our business. And she said, frankly, nowhere is it really yet fully developed. Does anybody know where exactly this will all lead, or even how best to approach these issues? So my number one task that I have asked Sona to take on as provost is to lead a discussion about this issue, not to give us the answers, not to lead us in a short time to the answers, but to lead a discussion with the faculty about how should we look as an institution, not just next week or next month, but in the next 5 to 10 years, to continue to fulfill our mission in this very new and challenging environment. So with that, please join me in welcoming our provost, Sona Andrews.
I need just a minute to put the mic down and get my computer up here. Without unplugging anything. So what a great opportunity. At first I did say to Wim, seems kind of lazy on the part of the president. But what a great opportunity for me to actually do this. And the last time I addressed a fairly large crowd of people at Portland State was at the summer commencement. But before that, it was my job interview. So I'm really glad that this is not a job interview, although my boss is sitting here in the front seat. He said, for those of you in the back, he goes, if you keep calling me lazy, it might be. Anyway, in the short time we have today, and I really, there's so much we can talk about, but in the short time we have today, what I'd like to do is give you a sense of some of the focus that I will be having this year. I then want to take you through a sort of wandering journey about some of the changes taking place in higher education, and then sort of bring you back to the work that we will have to do collectively. And as Wim said, I have a lot of questions. And my presentation is full of questions, and in fact, with very few answers. I have questions that we are all going to talk together about, questions that we're going to need to reflect about, and questions that we will be asking ourselves, what is it that we want Portland State to be? So underneath your seats, there are actually index cards. And if you have a question at the end of my presentation, we won't have time for questions, but if you have a question for me, you can write it on the index card. If you want to put your name and email, I'll try to respond, or it can just be anonymous. So I entitled this presentation, If the World is Flat, Why is Everything Spinning? And I did that mostly because Donna Berg said to me, you need a title. I said, well, I don't have a title. She said, well, you really need a title. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, I'm a geographer. Probably should do something with that. And a number of years ago, when Thomas Friedman came out with his World is Flat and really talked about how this world is changing, it really resonated, I think, with a lot of our universities. Well, I'm sort of hypothesizing that the world is no longer flat in the way Friedman described it. It is spinning, and it is spinning so fast, and it's a little scary how fast it is spinning. So let me start, again, by sharing with you some priorities that I have for this year, take you through this journey, and then bring you back home and start the year that way. So I'd like to frame, as a provost, I like to frame the work that I'm involved in, and it's not just me, it's everybody on our entire administrative team and all of you in this room and the entire campus, but around curriculum and students, around academic programs and research, around structure and organization, and around budget. But I need to be able to put that in the context of our strategic plan. So I'm trying to relate that work in those categories to the 5 themes that we have. And I'm going to share, again, just some of the things we're doing. So in each one of these theme areas, there might be just one thing. I don't want to give you the impression that is all the university is doing. And if you don't find yourself in one of these, I don't want you to have the impression what you do doesn't matter. So, for example, in the theme we have for Provide Civic Leadership Through Partnerships, one of the things that we're working on is establishing a joint school of public health with OHSU. In doing so, there are a lot of questions. Does Oregon need a school of public health? And Oregon State is considering doing one too. Do we need 2? What's our role in this partnership? Are we true partners? And how does it fit in the direction that we want to go? Another thing that we'll be focusing on, which is really, really important to Portland State University, is the improving student success. This institution has been working for quite some time and will continue to work on improving undergraduate and graduate student retention, graduation rates, credits to degree, and so on. But some of the questions we need to continue to ask ourselves is, how big do we want to be? What should the shape of our enrollment look like? And by shape, I mean the mix of graduates to undergraduates, in-state to out-of-state, freshmen to transfers, international versus domestic. Those are questions we'll all have to deal with. What does success look like? What does success look like for our students, but what does it look like for us? What does it look like for a faculty member? And then what kind of data and analytics do we need to make very sound decisions? We also want to be looking at continuation of the curricular effectiveness efforts. Around assessment, what are we learning from the assessment we do? Are we doing too little, or are we doing too much? And are we asking the right questions? We also are going to focus on reimagining the first year experience. It's been very successful at Portland State, but things are always worth relooking at. How do we conceptualize that challenge that we are now going to have with our freshmen who look very different than they might have looked 10 years ago? And are there other models we should be looking at? In the area of Achieve Global Excellence, we really do want to look at the functions and services we provide to grow in a strategic way our international footprint. And the kinds of questions we should be asking are, what services and functions do we need? How should those be structured? What areas of the world should we be focusing on? The world's a big place. Should we be strategic and looking at a few areas? Do we want to be strategic and having greater breadth? And how do we provide students with the experiences that we want them to have? In terms of enhancing educational opportunity, one of the things to focus on this year is to continue to build excellence in teaching and research related to some of these themes that the President has articulated in terms of sustainability, health and life sciences, the education pipeline, and STEM. What are our assets and strengths in these areas? How do we make the right investments? And how do we measure progress? I'd also like to see us take ownership in helping close the achievement gap and addressing some of the disparities in our community. We need to know what those are. And then we need to know where we can truly make a difference. And then we need to make sure we actually do something impactful that has a difference. And then we need to figure out how to sustain it. The worst thing one can do is start an initiative or a project and not be able to sustain it. And then finally, in the area of expand resources and improve effectiveness, well, the President found $2 million on the mountain, so I think we're okay there. We do really need to set a course for a stable, financial, successful institution working with everyone on campus to implement a new budget model. But we still have some questions. And the questions are, how do we make sure that Portland State is viable in the 21st century given all the changes? How do we make sure that the budget model supports the academic mission? And how fast or how slow do we move? We also need to strategically develop online programs. What degrees? Are faculty ready to move in this direction? What will it take to support students? How do we create a competitive market? There's so many other people in the game. And then finally, in terms of my priorities, assess the functions and staffing of the Office of Academic Affairs. Where do we add value and where do we not? I think my office is getting tired of me saying almost every day, and do we add value? Asking that question. How can we work more effectively, and how can we reduce administrative costs in our offices? So again, this is all sort of tied into the context of what's going on in our strategic plan. But if the world is flat, why is everybody spinning? And so for those of you that get a little queasy, just hold on. I want to talk about our students, and the students that we have now and the students that we will have 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and so on. And I'm going to just show you a couple of pictures of some of our current students. They have school spirit. And now what I want to do is I want to show you a picture of someone who could be one of our potential students. And I want to read to you about this individual. This is Skal Bang Breton, who goes by the name of Gago. And he was actually featured in the May 4th, 2012 edition of the Chronicle of Higher Education. And I'm going to read to you what they said about him But although he's not one of our students, he is like our students in so many ways. So let me tell you about him. He grew up herding yaks in a nomadic Tibetan community. He's 26 and composed poetry in his native language during the hours spent crisscrossing the alpine grasslands. When he was 14, his parents sold their herd so he could attend school, but he missed a nomadic way of life that became threatened as the grasslands disappeared. Now he leads cultural preservation and education projects in the region where he grew up. He stumbled onto one of Yale's massive open online courses, and for those of you who haven't heard what those are, they're called MOOCs, massive open online courses, after seeing a reference on a Chinese website. And before long, he was spending his evenings poring over lessons in Professor Langdon Hammer's class, The Philosophy of Law in the Western World. And although he lives in Tibet, as I said, his story isn't much different than our students. He's 26, he's working, he's connected to his community, his family situation was such that he had to drop in and out of school. And so we really need to be thinking about what are some of these disruptive changes that are taking place in higher education in a positive way that allow someone like Gego, in order to be able to take a class from Yale on poetry free. This is what some of the headlines are, and they come from the Chronicle of Higher Education and Inside Higher Education. And every day there's a new one. Conventional online universities considering strategic response to MOOCs. College may never be the same. A first for Udacity. Udacity is one of the companies that puts out these free online courses. A first for Udacity, a US university will accept transfer credits for one of its courses. Gates, Bill Gates, MOOCs and remediation. And just a couple weeks ago in the Seattle Times was this headline, UW to offer fee-based, notice it's not, they forgot the R, it's not free, but no, they meant fee-based. Fee-based courses through Coursera. Coursera is one of the companies that does this as well. And it says the University of Washington will offer credit for some online courses offered through Coursera, an online course platform, but students will have to pay a fee to receive credit. And this was a day after they joined Coursera, which typically offers courses for free. UW said, the courses we have, if students want to get college credit for it, they can, but they'll need to pay for it. So who is someone like Coursera? Well, I made this slide last week, and it's out of date today, because in the Chronicle of Higher Education today, one of the headlines was 17 additional universities, well, the Chronicle said 16 universities joined Coursera, but actually 17 did. So I'm guessing one joined after they did the headline. But these are the universities. These are the universities that are offering free online courses to anyone in the world. This is from Coursera's website. For example, I could take Network, Friends, Money, and Bytes. Cryptography from Stanford. Machine Learning. Introduction to Sustainability from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Shouldn't that be Portland State? I'm actually signed up for 3 courses. It says right here, signed up for 3 new courses. A couple weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, I decided, you know what? I really probably need to know what these are like. So I signed up for 3 of them. And one of the courses that I signed up for is a course from Berkeley well, I'm just going to show you a segment of it. So you're going to meet my professor. I'm going to just show you a segment from the introduction to the course, and then I'll show you a segment from the course itself.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this class on quantum mechanics and quantum computation. My name is Umesh Vazirani, and I'm a professor at the University of California at Berkeley. Here at Berkeley, we are very excited to be part of this revolution in education, bringing cutting-edge courses to anyone in any part of the world. So what is quantum computation? Quantum computation is a very young field, which is based on the discovery that quantum systems can be exponentially powerful. I'll say a lot more about this in subsequent videos, but in this video, I want to talk about the format of the course. The course...
So I'm going to stop him right here because he'll go on and tell me about the format of the course. By the way, this is a course for beginners. I know nothing about quantum mechanics, just so you know, but I'm really learning. It's really been interesting. So let me take you to just a piece of a lecture in the course. This is in the third week of the course.
Okay, so now let's start with studying what are the allowable states of a 2-qubit system. So as before, what we are going to do is consider 2 atomic qubits, which means that, let's say we have 2 hydrogen atoms and we are thinking of...
So this is the beginning of his lecture, and then I'll take you into another part of his lecture where he's actually explaining something and drawing it.
So now what happens when you measure the system? Well, what happens is that you see 0, 0, that both of the electrons are in the ground state with probability. So the probability that you see 0, 0 is 1 over 2, the square of this. And then the new state is 0, 0.
So I show that to you not to pass any judgment about quality, not to say that's what we should be doing, but I'm showing you what's out there. So if I were a student at Portland State, these might be some of the questions I would ask. I think I read where I can take free online courses. Where can I do that? Hey, I heard some of those free online courses are offered by MIT and Harvard. If I take any of those, can they count toward my Portland State degree? They also might ask, which free online courses might be good for me to take to supplement the Portland State course I'm taking? Or they might be asking, will Portland State give me credit based on what I've learned in these classes, prior learning credit or credit for something I've learned in these classes without having to take a Portland State class? Is an employer really going to care that I have a degree, or is it just what I know? And why should I pay Portland State any money when I can take classes for free? Those are some of the questions that we might anticipate from our students. What are some of the questions faculty would ask? And I have to apologize, I didn't really ask faculty, I just made up these questions. So, are we talking about awarding student credit and or assessing their proficiencies in courses they did not take from us? All of this has great possibilities. I wish my colleagues and I had the time to think more about this and develop effective strategies. Is the administration going to tell us that we are moving to a proficiency-based system of awarding credits and degrees? Gee, I'm intrigued by all of this, but the merit system in our department is based on the number of students I teach and how well I do that. So how is all of this going to work? What do we know about the effectiveness of these models and if they are a good way for students to learn? And my favorite one is the provost trying to get rid of tenure. So I'm not giving the answers to any of these questions except this one, and the answer is no. Just want to get the record straight. If I were the provost at Portland State, and I have to remind myself, oh yeah, that's what I am, I might be asking these questions. Gosh, all this stuff's going on. How do we engage the faculty in a productive conversation on these issues? How will we compete and collaborate with other institutions? How might free online courses and proficiency-based assessments factor into credit hour production and revenue generation in our developing financial model. If we decide to go in this direction, can we sustain it? In other words, if we base something on free online courses, will these free classes always be free? What's next? How does a university not get too far behind, but not too far ahead? And if I were the president of Portland State, these are the questions that I would be asking, and these are the questions our president is asking. How do we manage all of this change? How do we find the resources to do it? And most importantly, how do we make sure that a Portland State degree continues to increase in value and quality? This is an institution that has seen lots and lots of change, which is great because you're used to it. You don't know any better, in one sense. I mean, you've gone from this to this. You've gone from this to, as the president just said, being one of the top 10 up-and-coming universities in the country. And by the way, I'm really bummed that that got announced because I wasn't here when all that work was done. But it is a tribute to all of you. So how do we do this? How do we as an institution embrace this change, look at the future, ask these questions? So I thought I would put out a want ad. So here it is, top 10 up-and-coming university seeks consultant to help see into the future and answer some questions raised in today's presentation. Must be able to work with a broad range of campus constituents, have a demonstrated track record with change, and a sense of humor. Experience in higher education desirable. I have 2 applications so far. One of the applicants submitted a video.
You made it!
Yeah.
Welcome to my latest experiment. This is a big one, the one I've been waiting for all my life.
Well, it's a DeLorean, right?
Bear with me, Marty. All your questions will be answered. Roll tape.
Okay,
I will proceed.
Doc, is it...
All right, so that was one of the applicants. The other applicant just submitted a photo. But seriously, we have a lot of work to do, some of it which I've outlined in terms of working on our priorities, and others which I've outlined in terms of questions that we need to ask ourselves. These issues are broad, and I made a list of just some questions in addition to the ones I've just shown you that we're going to have to deal with. What do students expect from us? Where do we add value? What will a student credit hour mean a year from now, 5 years from now? What is proficiency, and how do we measure it? Will there be any distinction anymore between in-state and out-of-state students, between domestic and international students, between graduate and undergraduate students? How are we going to credential people, and how are we going to do it in a way when they get a credential from Portland State University, it's of high quality and has meaning? And what's the role of faculty in all of this? Are faculty continuing to lecture? Are they serving as mentors? And what's the role of staff in all of this? So I hope I've made it clear today. I've probably made it abundantly clear. I don't have any of the answers. I do know, though, that we do need to look into the future. Our students are going to have so many choices to make. And they're going to make those whether we come up with solutions or not. So I think we need to work on those. We do want that degree or credential from Portland State to be as best as it can be. We need to continue the dialogue about making change. We're going to do it in small groups. We'll do it in committees. We'll do it in departments. We'll do it in workshops. We're devoting the forum that takes place in January to this topic. We'll bring in speakers and experts, not the 2 that I showed you on the little clip here. It is not going to be easy. This is really frustrating work. There are going to be times when we disagree with each other, all of us, about things. I'm confident we can have these conversations in a civil manner, and I think it's going to be really enjoyable. What better than to be engaged in conversations around what does it mean for students to learn, and how do we provide that in a way that is meaningful for Portland State and for our students. So I can tell you this, that I know the president, the rest of the vice presidents, the academic leadership team, and the faculty senate, and many, many, many people are really interested in getting ready to engage in this work. And I really do think with your vision and your ideas, we can help turn those into action. So with that, I thank you for this part of the presentation. I'm going to do the awards in a minute, but I really appreciate you listening and sort of trying to at least understand what is this crazy new provost talking about. So thank you. And now we come to a more fun part of the program. And by the way, remember, if you do have questions, you should feel free to write them on those index cards. And just leave them on your seat and somebody will pick them up. And if you want to put your name and email, I'll respond directly. If you don't, then I'll just take it under advisement. So now's the part of the program where we actually recognize 4 members of our community for their contributions to Portland State. And these are the 2012 Excellence Awards. And I have to say that it's really interesting coming in as a new provost to read about these individuals and to read about the awards. And I'm quite humbled by it, not knowing any of them personally, but certainly hope to get to know them. So the first award is the Branford Price Millar Award, which is given annually to a faculty member who has demonstrated excellence in the area of scholarship, instruction, university service, and public service, and whose performance in the area of scholarship and research or other creative activity is judged to be exceptional. Branford Price Millar was the 3rd president of Portland State College, so he probably experienced that old sign. And he served from 1959 to 1968. Described as intelligent, unpretentious, and principled. Millar was a Harvard-educated scholar of English literature, and he was devoted to the liberal arts as the foundation of the college and of the university. This year's recipient of the Millar Award is Linda Walton, Professor of History and International Studies. And I want to read to you some of the things that nominators said about her. They said that she was an inspiring teacher who enjoys an international reputation for her research and publication in Chinese and world history. In addition to her reputation for scholarship and distinguished record as a teacher, Dr. Walton has also been an active member of the university community. Her personal engagement and humanity are evident in her university service, and her tenure as the chair of the Department of History invokes warm praise from her colleagues. So I want you to join me in congratulating Linda, and she's going to come up and say a few words.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. I'd like to use this opportunity to talk about something near and dear to my heart, which was inspired by a recent trip to China. So if I were to title this, I thought about a title, I'd call it Internationalization is Hard Work, ! At PSU, we've been talking about internationalization for almost as long as I can remember, and it's been a strategic priority through several administrations, including the current version, Global Excellence. As a faculty whose entire professional career has been devoted to things international, Chinese history and world history, I've also been critical for a long time of the way internationalization or global excellence has been used here and elsewhere to mean primarily overseas partnerships and the recruiting of foreign students. I just returned a couple of days ago from 2 weeks in China with a little bit of help from the Millar Award, for which I'm grateful, that included visits to several institutions of higher education in 3 different provinces. Based on this recent experience, there are 2 points I want to make about how we envision internationalization or global excellence. The first point is that on my recent trip, I was honestly surprised by the intensity of both student and faculty interest in communicating with foreigners. People were really hungry for contact and full of curiosity and questions about everything from American scholarship to student loan debt, and the level of ignorance is high. The second point is that although the great majority of people with whom I interacted may be able to read English if necessary, most of them could not speak well enough to communicate even on the most elementary level. Many more of us have to be able to communicate well in Chinese and other languages in order to bridge the enormous cultural gulfs that remain still, despite all evidence of glitzy globalization. And this is hard, hard work. It takes commitment on the part of the administration, dedication to teaching and research on the part of faculty, and willingness to put in long hours of study on the part of students. China is certainly one of the biggest global challenges for us because of both language and cultural difference, the understanding of which demands knowledge of the past as well as the present, especially in China, where history is taken very seriously indeed. Among other things, the recent controversy over the Diaoyu, or Senkaku in Japanese, islands is a good example of the power of history. Here, this dispute between China and Japan is overshadowed by recent events in the Middle East, the presidential election, and so on, but not surprisingly, it dominates the news in China. And evidence used by the Chinese government to support their claims to these islands has been largely historical, with Chinese authorities citing 16th century maps and texts to show why the islands are Chinese, as well as the history of 19th and 20th century Western and Japanese imperialism. Truly understanding how other people think requires getting inside their language, culture, and history. Yes, English is a global language, but we cannot rely on the use of English to really understand the world. Too many educated, intelligent, and thoughtful people around the world do not speak English. On my recent trip, I struggled hard to communicate in both formal talks and less formal exchanges, and admittedly fell short in many respects, but it was well worth the effort, and the effort was appreciated. Students today have so much more opportunity than I did to start their study at a much earlier age, when you really stand a chance of becoming fluent, even in the most challenging languages. They can enroll in immersion programs beginning in elementary school, study in China as undergraduate and graduate students, and they have access to so many more sources of information, much more global access than even a decade ago, when I used to require my Asian studies sophomore inquiry students to follow news about an Asian country in some print media, ranging from the Oregonian to the New York Times. And now they can access English language news from all over the world online, and they can easily discover that what is important in Asia is not necessarily what is reported here, and vice versa. But English language sources are only the tip of the iceberg, and so we also need to encourage our students to take on the hard work of genuine internationalization by learning other languages, and set examples for them by not taking the easy path of internationalization limited by the use of English to communicate only with other English-speaking people around the world, or through translators who may make the job of communication easier, but always secondhand and always at a distance. Thank you.
Our second award is the George C. Hoffman Award, which is given annually to a faculty member in recognition of distinguished contributions to the university in the areas of instruction, university service, and scholarship, which are done in the spirit of humanitarianism, civility, collegiality, with particular dedication to students and loyalty to the university. These are values that were cherished by the late George C. Hoffman, a distinguished dean and professor of history at Portland State University, and who this lovely hall was named after, right? I'm pretty smart, aren't I? I'm able to connect the dots. Vim's feeling better already. This year's recipient of the Hoffman Award is John Reuter, Professor of Environmental Sciences and Management. And let me read what some of the nominators said about him. He's an active scholar, a dedicated teacher, and a caring and involved citizen of the university. His research record is impressive, and the important work he does is dedicated not only to understanding, but also to developing solutions. Dr. Reuter has been a great contributor to the university community, and his presence in the Faculty Senate and university committees has been extraordinary. Will you join me in congratulating Dr. Reuter, and I'm going to ask him to come up and say a few words.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to start by thanking the committee that nominated me, Tom Sepelian and Grant Farr and Linda George. They did a lot of work, and I assumed that the letters people wrote were positive. So I'd like to address the curious criteria of collegiality. So for those of you that know me, and I know a lot of you, my nickname is Cactus, and to say that I'm collegial is like sort of pushing that word a little bit. And I describe myself as someone who has a lack of social polish. Other people just say I'm rude or whatever. And so I do have an extraordinary presence in Senate. Sometimes it's not all that beneficial. I want to tell you a little story about my daughter. I guess that's fair play up here. She was flying back from Costa Rica, and on the plane she met somebody. She says, "Oh yeah, my name's Sheridan Reuter, and my dad works at Portland State." The person next to her goes, "Oh yeah, I know your dad." So I said, "Well, who was it?" He said, "Well, he didn't really give me his name." That's a long flight for her not to be able to pull that out. But what I want to talk about is, I said, "What do you look like?" Okay. Anyway, so collegiality means working well with your colleagues to meet a common goal and respecting your colleagues. So this is what it means. And 30 years ago, as we saw in the diagram there, the focus on collegiality was being friendly, to have and respecting personal space of your colleagues. And in Portland, in the Portland manner, not to be too pushy or confrontational. That's just a Portland thing. So now, the definition is changing, and I think it needs to. So now, it's respect for the importance of common mission and professionalism of your colleagues. So it's shifted. Like now it's important to meet that mission, and you should treat your colleagues as professionals. And part of that means that you can judge your colleagues, you can judge their professional effort, and you can get in their business a little bit. And you're going to judge the quality, and that quality means timeliness, the content, the rigor of their creative products, and their teaching, everything really. So the best way to judge a colleague is by having somebody who's close to them judge. Well, this is where you get the conflict. And the conflict is, are you judging your colleague? And what right do you have to judge your colleague? So again, that's the collegiality, this sort of shifting definition. And I want to, I consider everyone here my colleagues, but I want to address this to my tenured faculty colleagues, those of us that have tenure. And this is where I think the potential for personal conflict is, conflict in uncomfortable situations is greater. But when Dr. Faustus offered you tenure and you said, "Where do I sign?" You sign on graduate student applications. You sign on P&T documents. That's where you sign. You made that deal. And part of that deal is to spend a good chunk of your effort in making those judgments of your close colleagues. I'm not the one to tell you how to do that, because obviously with a name like Cactus, I'm not really the friendly part. But there's a lot of people that know how to help you make those judgments. And that's in promotion and tenure and all those sorts of things. So, in summary, I was reflecting on the change of definition of collegiality over these last years, and I think that's very healthy. And to show that we are maturing as an institution and have to face more difficult situations in a rapidly spinning world with no apparent Pacific Ocean, so to speak. And that we can do this with a tried and true method of having the tenured faculty be responsible for those judgments, and that's our job. That's what we've been assigned to do. That's what we need to do. And the tenured faculty need to be involved in governance and also in setting the institutional direction. So I just use this platform of my reflection in order to bring you those points. Thank you.
The next award is the Butler Award, and it is given annually to recognize excellence of library service to students, faculty, and patrons of the Branford P. Millar Library. Kenneth Butler retired from the faculty in 1987 after 33 years of dedicated service, and along with his wife, who was a children's librarian and a strong library supporter, they established this award. This year's recipient of the Butler Award is Professor Carrie Wu, Reference and Instruction Librarian for Business and Economics and Associate Professor. Her nominators said, Ms. Wu exemplifies the finest characteristics of collegiality and professionalism and has built a laudable reputation at Portland State University. She is well known for her collaboration, support of students, and her creation of learning objectives and research tools. Carrie's unable to be here today. I know she's really appreciative of the award, and we should give a round of applause in her absence. And then the fourth award is the Mary H. Cumston Award for Service to Students, and it's given annually to a university administrator who has demonstrated excellence in the areas of service to students. The late Mary H. Cumston was former Career Center Director and was a beloved colleague whose endearing contributions to Portland State University and to the community have enhanced the development and delivery of student services. This year's recipient is Amy Shattuck, Director of Student Activities and Leadership Programs. And this is what her nominators had to say. Ms. Shattuck has made a tremendous impact on the lives of Portland State University students. Her energy, commitment, and positive approach keeps the campus engaged in meaningful discussions. Her expertise in leadership development and caring nature has made her a successful mentor, helping to give many students the courage to succeed. Amy is not here as well, but again, I know she's appreciative of the award, and we should give her a round of applause. So now I just have a few more things that I need to indulge you with. And one of the things that's done at this event is to welcome all of the new employees at Portland State University. So I really do want to welcome all of the new employees, and I'd like to ask the new faculty in the audience to please stand. And I should have said they should stay standing, because now I want to ask all the rest of the new employees at the university to please stand. So the faculty can stay seated. Other employees, please stand. What I'd What I'd also like to do is invite those faculty who received promotion or were awarded tenure effective in 2012-13 to stand. So before I give the official close to the program, I do want to thank you all for sort of indulging me in the journey that I took you on with just some ideas about the things that we are really looking forward to working on together this year. This is an exciting place to be. There's a lot going for Portland State. The energy in this room is great, and I just really appreciate the attention and the enthusiasm that everyone has shown in terms of where we need to go and what we need to do. So thank you again for that. And now, it says here, I'm supposed to invite you to join a reception in the lobby to greet new colleagues. So thank you very much.